Hi class, this is Marshall Sponder, your professor for social media for the arts. And this is one of my favorite sections really, and one that I've been most interested in for a while, called the geolocation of mobile. And that's also close to the end of the course too. There's so much in this area, there's so much data that we've been collecting, and a lot of the data we've been collecting, when social media first started in 2003, we were looking mostly at text, and we were looking at images. And then, we started noticing that because a lot of mobile devices were emitting geodata from the ISP, from GPS, and then various other technologies, that was being aggregated through the platforms, and then Twitter started publishing a bit of it. Facebook gathered it, Foursquare with the check-in. We started to get the ability to really do some pretty fantastic targeting with geolocation, and for a while I got really, really sucked into it. I mean, it's just like everything else. You see the potential, and then it's, oh yeah, okay, well I see that. Okay, now let me go on. Same old, same old. After a while, everything becomes same old, same old. But if we want to think about where we are today, well, I mean, I do almost all of my reading of email for the most part on my mobile device. I've got like half a dozen or more email accounts I'm looking at. I'm always walking around, and honestly, I'm seeing a lot of people taking selfies everywhere. I'm seeing the dominance, the emergence of iBeacon and Bluetooth wireless technology that's taken off since, I think, 2013. It's now 2017, going to 2018. The devices keep on getting more powerful. And, most of the time, we're not even at home anymore. We're on the go. We're time shifting our attention. Majority of data is now coming from mobile devices, not from desktops or laptops. So that has important implications. And because a lot of this, and there's a lot of people that can collect this data on where we are. I mean, for one thing, the ISP, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, they know everything about where you're moving around. They know your location within 20 feet, maybe closer than that. Can you imagine that? Google knows everything about where you are. So does Facebook. Many of your apps are collecting data from your devices. They know you. You're like a web analytics pixel walking throughout space, constantly collecting data and broadcasting data, and it's being sifted. It's being sifted whether you want it to be, and even if you go out of your way to turn it all off, which you can do on your mobile device, it's still ways to get it out of you. And that data is incredibly valuable to marketers and to a lot of other people and to governments. It can be a double-edged sword. It can give you incredibly useful insights. It also borders on behavioral data, because now that you can actually see where people and when people were at a place, and you can see what, in a lot of cases, they're taking a picture of what they're looking at, and they're referencing it, and you've got their account name because they're always posting to their account, and their account's being filtered. So you have all this incredible data. From a marketer's perspective, it's a dream. From a privacy perspective, it's a nightmare. And from our perspective, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. That's all I can say. Proximity marketing is happening all the time. And we've got a little video on here. I put a couple, I really updated this section. You have all this data. Brands, we can engage with each other too. I mean, this should be all second nature to most of you. I mean, you've grown up with this. This is your reality now. There's no way to avoid it. Wherever you go, this phone is there. The data is being collected in London, being collected. You're taking the selfies. You're looking at locations you're walking by. You know, you're getting messages as you're walking by. This is all taking place in London. You can buy something as you're walking by the London Eye. So I have a little video on there. Now Google makes it easy. They're collecting all this data. I mean, like I say, the big players, the big whales are collecting data.
But what's most important is the people. Which can be tough because Tina, who's hosting, lives north of town. Greg's coming from far
So you can
away,
tell people where you are. You can make your own customized maps.
Ben, who will take her to the party. He said to meet at the pink bench. Yet he didn't say which one.
Yeah, didn't say, did he?
Problem, because Ben can use Google Maps to share his precise location in real time. For exactly as long as he wants, and only with Kate. While he stalls for time, Ben can use Google Maps to check in and make sure everyone else is arriving at Tina's. Then,
yeah, it's pretty cool. This
road
private messaging thing you can do. Because Google's in the middle of it, so it knows everything about you. But is this good? I mean, yeah, I think it is good. You know, if you're, especially you're lost in a city, it's good. This was an interesting thing one of my students had alerted me to a couple of years ago.
Hi, I'm Jack Vale, and I wanted to see how easy it would be to get personal information from
this was pretty cool,
strangers. And while I'm at it, of course, freak them out a little bit. Keep in mind when you watch this video, I got all of this information just by searching their personal social media posts. And I got it by searching for the closest Twitter, Instagram, and other social media posts to my current location. Let's go. Sorry to bother you. Is your name Jessica?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jack.
Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah, isn't that cool? I did some of these things fixed myself back first.
Whenever it comes to me and I know who it is, I know it's weird, but I have to shout it out to see if I'm right, and in that case I was right, so...
Yeah, really.
What the right now? Wait a minute.
Are you Stephanie?
How do you know?
How you doing? I'm Jack.
Did you just make that up and you just said that?
No, Elena, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I was just gonna say happy birthday. Someone in your family's referred to as Pops. Is it like a dad or
I think he's a psychic or something.
Really? Yeah. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you too, because I know you were actually, I should have said it to you because yours was before hers, but anyway, well, it's been like 7 weeks now or something like that. But
See,
anyway,
all this data you put up on there, it's all, you know, even in your profile, you can pull all this stuff.
like a little white curly dog, sort of like a little white dog.
Stop it.
That's crazy.
He's a psychic, right?
Paris.
I don't know, Paris. Wait.
It wasn't Paris, though. It was like the first few letters, like pear or par or something like that. Am I right?
I don't know. I don't know if she had a dog.
Seriously?
I swear to God.
Blanca or Blanca? Is that, how did I? Blanca. It's what? Blanca. Blanca. Okay.
Spear bear.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, anyway, I don't need to see any more of this,
Recently,
but
like, had lunch, dinner, or something like that. Chicken. There was
So-
chicken involved. I know for sure.
he's going around psyching out these people because he can actually, you could do this right now, actually. I'll even show you how to do that. But isn't that kind of interesting? So this was going on for a couple years. Yeah, it was okay, you know, and then like towards the end of 2016, bam, you know, like I was using a platform called Geophidia for a couple of whiles. In fact, I have a research study I did at the Metropolitan, and it's actually up. Some of my presentations. I have a video that I put into the course of presentation in Miami a couple years ago. I was talking about the research I did at the Met on my own. I couldn't even get anyone at the Met to really look at it. Seemed like, you know, because they're just going to look at only the stuff they do for themselves, or when they need something. It's very difficult to figure out how to talk to them. But at any rate, someone from the ALCU complained about the data that's being pulled from some of these platforms. And I'll show you a little bit more about that, but let's look at this for a second. Look at this, make this big.
Twitter announced Tuesday it joined Facebook and Instagram in suspending access to a company called Geophidia. It tracks social media posts in real time to help law enforcement investigations. Police departments across Maryland have contracted with the company, including Howard County, Baltimore County, the city of Laurel.
They're
and
probably
Baltimore
still
City.
using it because
Last week,
it's actually the
GeoPD
best one
representatives
for
were
this
invited to
stuff.
speak at GeoPedia's national conference in Chicago.
I never did go
Chilling
to.
effect is what is so dangerous.
The American Civil Liberties Union released a report that, among other conclusions, says GeoPedia exploits online political activism.
By taking what is supposed to be a tool for communication and turning it into a tool for government surveillance.
I think city government should use all the tools that they have available.
Today, Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake was asked, is
Well-
there a limit to that?
When we stay in the public.
Actually, what happened was that the data that GeoPedia was being supplied with, a lot of it got pulled. Some of the other platforms often suffered the same fate, but most of them still have the data as long as they adhere to certain terms of service. Now, it's important to understand what this data really is, because a lot of data that's being generated was data that was public. I mean, if I go and take my selfie, or I go and take something, put it on Instagram, you know, I mean, and only my friends are going to see it, and I put it out there. Say I'm in my dorm room and I'm a student and I'm taking a picture I only think my friends are going to see, but then there's this someone else. I could put a little square around the dorms and I can sift up all those posts that were not really, no one was thinking about all of this before. Because it's not only what you do, it's the context that you do it in. Remember I said in section 7 about influence? It was all about context, you know. The tools, the Twitter and the Facebook, all of that. No one ever thought that it could be looked at the way it began to be looked at. But once you overlaid the geo data on top of the posting, all of a sudden you could see literal heat trail of where everybody who let their feed open was going. It, you know, could be incredibly valuable if you had the time to organize it. Again, unstructured data from the perspective of what you might want to do with it. What you're going to do with it kind of depends on what you want to do with it. What do you want to do with it depends on what you think the platforms can do that aligns with your idea. What your idea is, well, it depends on what someone asks you to do or what you feel like doing. So what you get out of these tools is going to depend on what you want to put into them. Now, you know, I mean, the typical thing is the check-in, which no one even bothers to do anymore because you don't have to. You're automatically being checked in. It's passive check-in data. In fact, if you downloaded Foursquare, you were automatically part of their online panel. I'm still part of it, you know. So they're picking up every time I'm passing by like Office Depot or Staples, you know, and I'll get a message that you like the place. And I was just walking by there, you know. Well, they know I was where I was walking to, every spot I walked by. They know the locations I'm likely to go to. They have a heat trail and a heat map. They're aggregating this data and they're selling it to marketers. Brands basically that are paying for that. There's a famous study they did for Chipotle in 2015, I think, or early 2016, where they were able to pull the data from all the people that Chipotle was hit by the health scare. But they were trying to see what the impact of that was in terms of foot traffic, and they were able to use algorithmic analysis of the heat pattern traffic of people walking by to see that the normal audience that went to Chipotle were mostly regular people. Those people were really kind of affected. The regular people stayed away more while this was going on for several months, which impacted their earnings. Their corporate quarterly earnings. The people that were just going in to have a meal that weren't regulars, they weren't really impacted at all. The quarterly impact in the first quarter of 2016, I believe, was predicted to be, I think 30% down year to year. And but Foursquare actually predicted it to be even a little closer than what the analysts were predicting, based on, they were within 1%, but a little closer even than anyone predicted. So they got that by, using this data, this data that, and because Foursquare is spending a lot of time mapping locations, they also have not only X and Y, they have Z axis data. So they have, a lot of times if you data sift on a building, you're going to be just getting everything flat on a building, let's take a skyscraper. So you're getting everything in a square area there, or a round area. But if you want to pick up the various floors and the businesses on those floors, well, I think Foursquare can do that because it can resolve the name of the business that the traffic is near to the floor, and so they can get that Z-axis out of there. So the depth is what I'm saying. But having said that, a lot of this data turns out to be wrong. Here's an article that I found on Forbes that really says that, that the data is wrong in a lot of cases. Mobile ad location data is wrong. Now they're saying ad data, but what they're really saying is the targeting data. If you are targeting something to where you think someone is, that location where you think they actually are may be wrong, may be off by so many feet, or could be off by a mile. So, I mean, yes, this all these cool new tools and data, and it's all cool. But bear in mind that a lot of it's still, crapshoot. And probably will be for some time. So, with that being said, there's certain types of geo-targeting you could do. You can target like in a very small area in a circle. And there's two other types you can do. I think I thought I had more in here, but I made me only put in one here. Oh no, you can do this. Here's where you can collect people that go into this area and then and see wherever they go. So you can do that, and you could just look at a whole geographic area, like you can get the exact mapping of a district, say, or a voting district. I did something. So getting back to what I did at the Met, I had done some of my own work back in 2014, and I presented this. From 2013 to 2014, I was using Geophedia. So this is stuff I teach. So I collected 11 months of data at the Met. Didn't do anything with the Met. I just used Geophedia. I had use of it because I was doing some academic research, and they gave me the platform. I collected a lot of data. We talked about the Big Five and personality tests. Yeah, well, I was thinking about that too. I mentioned that. And that was in Assessment 5. So I thought there'd be cool things you could do with this data. And of course, selfies are always big. It's great when you can pick selfies to see. You see so much about what people think when they compare themselves to an area. Like this person's clearly comparing himself to a pharaoh. So much of the context is being created and can be interpreted by the location and based on the face and things like that. It's kind of pretty cool, and I thought it was too. So I collected a bunch of data from November 14th, 2013 to October 21st, 2014. So everything here was collected with no help from the Met. All I did was sift this data out myself. So let me just look at it this way. My supposition was the real data was at the way people interact. The art was really not so much in the museum, it was what people did when they connected. It just so happened I had a friend that was a guard we talked, and I asked him what people did at the Met. What did they do there? Like, what are the stories? Because even though I've been going for 40 years, I didn't really know what people did there. So he told me, well, see, there's these 8 things that people do, at the Met, like, or 16 things. And he observed these stories. And he said, well, they go to the Temple d'Andorre, they go to the rooftop bar. So I knew that's ethnographic research. If you want another term, here's a guy standing there for 5 years observing everything. And he had 15 or 16 things he observed people. Patterns. Patterns. Just think of it that way. If you're a data scientist, it's patterns. Patterns of behavior. He saw that. Cool. I have something to look for. I'm not just sifting through data and not knowing what I'm looking for. I'm actually got some kind of patterns. With that pattern, I was able to take the data and categorize it. It was not hard for me to make an estimation that I would say 11% of the traffic was foreign visitors, because I could tell by the language. I found about 4% of the time were selfies of all the traffic. That was Instagram and Twitter mostly, a little bit of Facebook. Some of it was school traffic. Again, since we had a story, we had a way of looking at the story. If we didn't have story, then we wouldn't have a story to look for. So if you take a lot of data and just throw it on a plate, it's going to be hard. You can cluster the data using cluster analysis, but at the end of the day, you need a story. You need something to say, something you're going to aggregate this data around. And so I saw that these stories could be very powerful and interesting. Now, some of this traffic I didn't bother to categorize. Maybe a quarter of it I couldn't. I found, though, interestingly enough, that the rooftop bar at the Met had only opened 6 months of the year, but had a quarter of all the traffic. It's like everybody would go up there. And fashion shows, just drew a lot of people to the Met, which is undoubtedly why they do them, because I came up with my own formula because I had to do some estimations, but I believe that I probably, with this, got closer to the essential truth of the audience at the Met than they have with whatever they have. And I don't think they're particularly data sophisticated, if you want to know the truth. I was able to see that, and not surprisingly, that of the Instagram and Twitter posts, for the most part, there was some Flickr in there, 86% of it I only saw come once. I didn't discover that account again in the months. And that's not surprising. It's a tourist location. But there were a lot of people that came 2 to 5 times, or someone and there were some that came more than 20 times, like me. Now, one could almost say that those that came 2 to 5 times, a lot of them should really be members. But if we equate that to the total audience of the 6 million people they say came, you could probably say that a good 750,000 people, if you were going to equate it that way, were people that displayed membership behavior, but they weren't really, I doubt that all of them were members. But they were coming, there's a lot of people like me that come often. I go to the Met often. Relatively, I like it. It's more ritualistic for me. It's not like I necessarily see everything new. And I try to kind of equate that based on their actual numbers. Bearing in mind that someone that's coming back a lot is actually inflating the visit count, because like someone like me, if I come back 30 times a year, and they're counting 6 million people walking in, but they're not like really understanding that a good chunk of that traffic is return people coming in over and over again. But, never mind. I mean, they don't know that. Yeah, you know what? They're not as sophisticated with all of what they have than I had. I had more in some ways than what they have. They think they had. And my guard friend that was working here told me they weren't very sophisticated there. And it's not surprising to me. Why would they be? But at any rate, I was able to take all that data. I had their account, so I knew who they were. I was able to see how many times. I was able to see who these people were. The people that came back 75, 80 times, most of them 200 times, they were vendors or people that worked directly at the museum. They were checking in. Some of them had multiple accounts, an Instagram, a Twitter account. So altogether, I got about 47,000 Instagram, 48,000, and about 7,000, almost 8,000 Twitter accounts. And maybe on average, people posted twice when they were there. And now I looked at those themes that I collected from my friend. And anytime I looked for the theme, I just put a little rectangle or area around that part of the museum, and I was able to sift up. And I saw exactly the behaviors that he said I would see. You know, because I knew what to look for, all of a sudden I had something to look for. It made life so much better. Isn't it great when you've done a combination of an ethnographic research and you've done all this data, and then there's all this data to be had? I mean, it's a junkie's dream. All these people, they were all posting, not realizing that all this data is out there for anybody to sift. I could even get from Geophidia the active times a day in that part of the museum, specifically. The busiest day, the busiest times of and I could put that little rectangle right around the Temple of Dendur and then look at what people were posting and look at the text that they were posting. And you know what I found? Hardly anybody there was using the word Dendur. So if I was using keyword search, I'd be screwed. Because the reality is when I use keyword search, which is typical search engine stuff, I'm actually screwing everything else because most of the data in social media is behavioral, and that's what people don't understand. If you're just going to use text tools, you're going to miss 85% of the spectra of data that's out there. You're just going to sample what you're looking for, and you're going to miss everything else. So much there. That's just not a text word. That's not the text you're looking at. So we also started to look at why do people go to the rooftop bar, well, my friends seem to think it made them feel important and look down on stuff. And also, so we could see that even though this thing was only open 6 months of the year, it was getting lion's share of traffic at the museum. The restaurant at the Met, any member can go. I can go. There wasn't really that much I could get about the restaurant. People were posting there. Again, you see all the account names. I know these people. You can figure out their names. You could probably get their telephone numbers. You could probably find out anything you want about these people if you want to put enough trouble into adding this stuff together. I also looked for the Rembrandt and Vermeer. That was cool because, people wanted to go hang out there. A lot of guards like to be guards there. The theme of children at the Met was important. People like to do grimaces and facial expressions. That was pretty cool. I found some pretty graphic stuff there. I actually took it out of my original deck. I found a lot of people groping and, doing, pretty... It's funny if you think about it, but if you're corporate and you see some of this stuff, it's kind of like, yeah, well, this person be disciplined. You have to think about the fact that it's not what you're doing, but how it also could be seen. And if, it's hard. It's hard because if you want to look for everybody, you're going to find something on everybody if you look hard enough. And, don't think it isn't out there. It's out there. And no matter how hard you try to hide it, it's going to be there somewhere. If you look hard enough, you're going to find something on everybody almost. Now, a lot of people, he observed, my guard friend, that people like to drop coins in and pick up other coins. And, the Met would collect these coins, but sometimes people would take a coin and put a coin in. I didn't know that. A lot of people were mocking the fallacies of the Mayo sculpture. I mean, I said, I saw some pretty grotesque things there. And the times where it was active at the Roman Ring. Now, one of the things that was kind of interesting is my guard friend didn't know what Gossip Girl was, but lots of people were going to the front of the steps and they were talking about Gossip Girl. I estimate about 3% of all the traffic posted was posted at the steps of the Met, and they were talking about Gossip Girl, and they still are. And the Met doesn't do anything with Gossip Girl at all, and yet Gossip Girl, some of the scenes in the TV show happened there. And, it's not only at the Met. There's other places people go and talk about Gossip Girl. But what's interesting is if you subscribe to the idea that brands are what their fans and followers think they are, that the brand shape, the Met often resists what people who are its enthusiasts really want it to be, because it's an elitist institution, just like MoMA is. Even though they say they're not, they are. The Met never wanted to do anything with Gossip Girl. They could have done a lot with Gossip Girl and take that theme and got people in, but they don't want to do it. They don't want to touch it. That's just who they are, I'm not saying they have to change. I'm just saying that it's kind of interesting that people talk about the popular culture now that we own the brand, but when it comes down to it, that's not true with the Met. They don't really want to be what the people that go there want them to be. They want to be they want to be what they've been. So I guess they talk out of two sides of their mouth. That's not surprising. Most people do. So you can see all kinds of things that people, by the fact that they're comparing themselves to these images, they're making a statement. And that statement can be interpreted in a number of ways. In fact, the fact that people even bother to walk in a room and take a picture next to something kind of says something about their choices. And, that can say something about their personality. Bathroom selfies were particularly, we see this everywhere. I mean, people love to go in a bathroom and take pictures of each other. People were doing it all over the Met. So what we did is, with the Twitter data, at the time I knew a platform, now working with IBM, and they try to look, in this case they look at the followers. I was hoping they'd look at the following, but they look at the followers to see these accounts that were at the Met, that we know were at the Met. We could actually see all kinds of things that they were doing, that they liked, that the followers of these people who were at the Met. That we saw that they more likely, there would be a lot more female followers of the people who would go to the Met, and that the top 10 cities of the followers of the people who came were, of the attendees, you could see most of them were New York based, but there were San Francisco, Los Angeles. A lot of the followers of the people that came there also were interested in art history fellowships, more than double. More than the average Twitter population, interested in jewelry, beauty, home decorating. Not technology, though, interestingly enough. Now, one of the things that was kind of intriguing to me is that on average, the people who came to the Met were more interested in Perrier water than the average Twitter person by 6 times or something like that. But this Veuve Clicquot, this champagne, it seemed to be 6.3 times more likely than the average Twitter user, but you wouldn't see a Met ever serving that. So by just taking the people that we knew were at the Met, that we data sifted through Geophidia, and you could do it also through almost free tools like Picodash, you could have gotten all this stuff. So out of that, I came up with 8 actionable items. Again, did I get anybody at the Met to look at this? Would they even look at it? Would they condescend to look at anything that they didn't produce themselves or ask for? No. I even talked to the chief digital officer when he was still there before he left, and he never looked at it. I gave it to him. Never looked at it. We saw that people were mostly at the Templeton door between 4 and 6 p.m. on Fridays. That's a late night. Light comes in there, so that'd be a good place to have, concert and event those time. People are attracted to light, attracted to space. We know that people go to the rooftop bar a lot, even though it's only open 6 months of the year. It seems like they should put a dome on top of it for the other 6 months. And I heard, my friend told me last time I talked to him, that they were planning to do that. Wonder where they got that idea from. Also, data stories here. Food, dining. The Met wants to tell stories about food. Maybe they should partner with Wolfgang Puck or something and put their logo on some food. You could go into store and buy like a Met-inspired meal. I don't know. They could do something like that. The selfies are very popular. They could do something with that. The Met does a lot with education, but they don't create much online. MoMA's done a lot more than they have, you know. And, you know, people like to date at the Met. You know, the Met, I think, is beginning to get into that. Museum Hacks does a lot of stuff there. And, well, again, a Gossip Girl, right? I mean, Gossip Girl, they could have done so much with Gossip Girl, put stuff on the steps of the Met, XOXO, come in. They don't do anything. You know, I noticed that when I was walking around, where was I the other day? I went over to the casinos over in the Foxwoods, not the Foxwoods, the other one right nearby, Mohegan Sun. And I noticed as I was walking by, because I was playing my favorite Sphinx 3D game over at the casino, just because I got captivated recently with the 3D effects of that thing. And you know what I found is that there was little places where someone could take a selfie picture there, but you think the Met would do that? Nah. You know, they have people going in the bathroom taking pictures of themselves at the Met. So one of my students said, well, why don't they put like something in there, like take a picture around a piece of art, not a real art, but a photo of it. I'm not saying that these things are necessarily things they have to do or should do, but these were actionable informations. They have an app, but they haven't really made it work with iBeacon yet. So, you know, the geo, you know, so that's what I did, you know, and I presented that, you know. This was all data I didn't, and this is my talk over in Miami a couple years ago where I said that. Now, I teach a course on text analytics and social media analytics at Baruch. So I did something very similar to this, but with students where I had them do their projects. You know, one of my students said that they were particularly interested in a McDonald's campaign with the green tea, not latte, the green tea matcha that was going on in Malaysia. I'd been to Singapore a couple times, but that was not being done then there. So green tea McFlurry. So they had a green, and I put this up. I did this a couple months ago. You know, I just took anything that a student said. Well, let's look at this, and I used Pico Dash and a couple other brand watch to do this. Began in Japan 2013, and it was in Malaysia. So I looked at the stuff McDonald's has been creating all over the world, and I saw that McDonald's does stuff in local areas. They make local promotions. So I was finding out about the green tea McFlurry. You know, like where could you buy it? Where were people mentioning of it? And Brand Watch, just using text analytics, I was able to isolate. Yes, the campaigns are going on in Malaysia. And then I used Pico Dash, which to go and just kind of look at locally in nearby Malaysia, to look at what people were posting about. I was able to focus on the hashtag, but I could look at specific locations downtown, different parts of Malaysia, and I could see what the posts were. I was able to go in and see the various approaches with text analytics that I was able to get. And Pico Dash, I was able to get some more really visual, visceral kind of information. I was able to see the different people posting based on the hashtags that were around us. And I could see that even in the McFlurry, McDonald's was doing something on every continent, but they were doing something different. So you could see that they see this way too. They've got something different going on simultaneously in every continent. I could take the Pico Dash data and data sift it out, right out of there into Excel. Now, this would work for a couple hundred verbatim. You know, for big one, recently I was looking at Atlantic City, couple thousand, too big. They'll charge you if you want to get that out of there. But, you know, just for a couple hundred, you could probably just download it right out of Pico Dash yourself. I was able to find the posts, the top liked posts on Instagram, where it was in the city, and Ceylon City. I was able to look at what else is being posted around there. I was able then to take the Brand Watch data. I was able to kind of look at the sentiment around it in Crimson, and I was able to use network mapping. My co-author in my new book, you know, Gohar Khan. He did some studies, not so, I think these aren't great studies, about network mapping on YouTube videos, to show you what you could do with that. But, at the end of the day, I decided, and I even used Crimson to do text analytics geo emotion tracking on emotions coming out of people talking about stuff. I was able to do, I just use these tools to sift data so I could better understand what I was talking about. I pulled the data out of Crimson and looked at the dominant themes. I looked at all of this data. I was able to use a little bit of geodata out of Crimson. I looked at topic waves. I did all this in a couple hours. I looked at influencers out of this data, and I took the top posts. I was seeing what people were saying about my new addiction, green tea McFlurry cupcake. I did all this brand research in a couple hours using these tools. And so that's just something I needed to, because this is my passion. This is the thing I really love about geodata and social media, because so much of data there. And you don't need so much of it. I mean, even if you get like 1% of the people at a museum, or 1%, that's enough to do categorization of the people, because you can get a lot of data. 1% of everybody, a lot of data. Obviously, the government is using this data. Palantir, the guy, I think this guy is Cambridge Analytica is one of the guys. I think Hillary Clinton was using it in her campaign a lot. I mean, these data are being used for better or worse. And so if you listen to this, you'll see what the data is being used. We talk a little bit about iBeacon data, which is the geodata. We talk about a lot of this different stuff here that you can pull. And, tools and platforms that allow you to pick this data, like this Bluetooth data is, in a way, it's more opt-in, because at least you have to have an app for the most part. We talk about mesh networks, where you can make sure that the right beacon is firing and control that better. You put too many of these together, they misfire. You get inaccurate data, you're getting the wrong data being broadcast to the mobile device. So you have to kind of really, once you get too many of these beacons together, that that it becomes problematic if you don't have a mesh network. There's different protocols, iBeacon versus Eddystone. There's some differences, but of course, executives prefer this location data is more useful. It is, but again, it's generating all this data, the data that's being picked up all over the place. So, and then this last thing you can do here is, the data that's being collected on all of us, not just this geodata, but just our behavioral data, the data that I mentioned earlier in the course about Google Analytics and all this data that's being collected. If you look at this data, all you have to do is go to the BlueKai registry. I give you the URL and do it on a desktop or laptop and just start searching around, and then look at the registry and look at the collection and what it thinks it knows about you. Actually, this data, to be honest with you, I think most of it should be thrown out, because if this is the data that they're targeting me on, I mean, some of it they got right, but some of it's just so wrong. And it's based on behaviorally on where I'm going. So what you see at the end of the day when you sift into the cauldron of data is that there's incredible opportunities for marketers, but there's incredible challenges, because in order to use this data well, you've got to organize it and clean it. And it's so much work to clean it, there's no creativity left to do anything with it after you've cleaned it. So it's an incredible problem, but incredible opportunity. It's very exciting. That's why I try to instill in my students the opportunities that can be generated with this information, but also the fact that you need imagination and discipline to work with it. So I leave you with this very long video that really, maybe I spoke longer than I wanted to, but I think is one of the more interesting videos in the course. I am going